did you tell them, Delilah?
The future of this organization depends entirely on our collective vision, which is why I find what I'm seeing now so deeply concerning.
The girl was elbow deep in dirty water when they called her name. Not from the kitchen, from the stage. The voice came through the speakers, clear, deep, calm, and it cut through the noise of 600 people in evening gowns and tailored suits like a knife through smoke. Would Miss Serwa Boama please come to the stage? She didn't hear it the first time. She was standing behind a steel door in the kitchen of the Grand Palais Ballroom in downtown Houston, scrubbing champagne flutes in a sink that was too small and water that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. Her fingers were wrinkled. Her back ached. The black rubber apron she wore over her only good dress was streaked with grease and soap residue. The second time, a server pushed through the kitchen door, eyes wide, and said, Yo, they're calling your name out there." Serwa looked up, soap dripping from her hands. "What?" "The keynote speaker, on stage. He just said your name, twice." Serwa Boama, 22 years old, orphan, dishwasher, stood in that kitchen with suds running down her forearms and tried to understand why a man she had never met was calling her name in front of 600 of the most powerful people in Houston. She didn't know yet. But in exactly 4 minutes, she would walk through that steel door, cross the ballroom floor in a grease-stained apron, stand under a chandelier that cost more than every dollar she had ever earned in her life combined, and hear 7 sentences that would change everything. 7 sentences. But this story doesn't start with her. It starts with the woman who put her in that kitchen. And to understand that woman, to understand why she did what she did, and why part of you might almost forgive her, you need to go back 22 years, to the worst night of Josephine Mensah Tetta's life, and to the promise she made that she could never keep. Josephine Mensah Tetta was 31 years old when her best friend died. Her name was Grace Boama. They had grown up together in Spring Branch, a neighborhood on the west side of Houston where Ghanaian families had been settling since the 1980s. Same street, same school, same church. They were closer than sisters, the kind of friendship that starts at age 4 and never needs to be explained to anyone because it simply is. Grace was the bright one, the warm one, the one who walked into a room and made everyone in it feel seen. And she married young, a man named Ya Boama, a mechanical engineer who worked at a refinery in Pasadena. They had a baby girl in 2004. They named her Serwa. Josephine was the other one, the quiet one, the one who studied harder because things didn't come as easily. She got a business degree from the University of Houston. She got a job at an event planning company downtown. She worked her way up to senior coordinator. She was good at logistics, details, timelines. She was not good at people. She never married, not because no one wanted her, but because she held everyone at a distance she couldn't explain, and eventually they stopped reaching. Grace was her only exception. Grace was the only person who could get past the wall, and Grace never made her feel like the wall was a problem. On March 17, 2005, Grace and Yaw were driving home from a church event in Katy. It was raining. A truck ran a red light on the Beltway. The impact killed Yaw instantly. Grace died at the hospital 47 minutes later. Serwa was 11 months old. She was at home with a babysitter. Josephine got the call at 10:14 p.m. She drove to the hospital. She identified Grace's body. She sat in the hallway for 2 hours. She didn't cry. She couldn't. The grief was too big for tears. It sat in her chest like a stone and stayed there. At 1 a.m., she drove to Grace and Yaw's apartment. She picked up Serwa. The baby was asleep. She smelled like baby powder and milk. Her fist curled around Josephine's finger and held on. Josephine looked at her. This tiny, warm, breathing thing that was all that was left of the only person who had ever truly loved her. I'll take care of you," she whispered. "I promise." She meant it. With everything she had, she meant it. And for the first 5 years, she kept that promise. She adopted Serwa legally. She moved into a bigger apartment in Spring Branch. She hired a nanny for the hours she was at work. She bought children's books and educational toys and a tiny dress for Serwa's first birthday that had sunflowers on it because Grace had loved sunflowers. She was not a natural mother. She didn't have the instinct for softness. She held Serwa the way you hold something precious and fragile, carefully, deliberately, with the constant low-level fear of breaking it. She didn't sing lullabies. She didn't make up silly voices. She read parenting books like they were instruction manuals and followed them step by step. But she was there, every morning, every night, every fever, every tantrum, every first word and first step. She was there. And then the company went under. In 2010, the event planning firm where Josephine had worked for 9 years shut down. The owner had been embezzling. The clients disappeared. The employees were let go with 2 weeks severance and a letter of recommendation that wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. Josephine was 36 years old with a 5-year-old child, no job, and savings that would last 4 months. She applied to 37 companies in 6 weeks. She got 3 interviews. She got 0 offers. The economy was still recovering from the recession. Event planning was a luxury. Nobody was hiring. The savings ran out in August. She sold her car in September. She moved to a smaller apartment in October. By November, she was working 2 jobs, front desk at a Holiday Inn Express from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., and waitressing at a barbecue restaurant on Westheimer Road from 4 p.m. to midnight. Serwa went to a neighbor's apartment after school. A woman named Mrs. Owusu, who watched 4 kids for $40 a week each. She fed them rice and chicken and made them do homework at her kitchen table. Josephine picked Serwa up at midnight, carried her home asleep, put her in bed, set her alarm for 5 a.m., did it again, every single day, for 2 years. Something changed in Josephine during those 2 years. The softness she had been building, the careful, deliberate tenderness she had learned from parenting books and practiced every night, got buried. Not destroyed, buried, under exhaustion, under resentment, under the slow, a grinding realization that she had given up her entire life for a promise she made in a hospital hallway at 1 a.m., and the world had not rewarded her for it. She didn't blame Serwa, not consciously, but somewhere deep, deeper than she could name, a thought took root. If Grace hadn't died, if Josephine hadn't made that promise, she would have been free, free to build her career, free to move cities, free to take the kind of risks that people without children can take. She never said it out loud. She barely even thought it. But it was there, a splinter under the skin of every sacrifice. And splinters, if you don't remove them, become infections. In 2012, Josephine caught a break. A woman she used to work with at the event planning company, a woman named Adwoa, had started her own firm. She needed a senior planner. She called Josephine. I know what you can do, Adwoa said. Come work with me. I can't pay much yet, but we'll build it. Josephine took the job. She was good at it. Better than good. She had always been the logistics brain, the one who made impossible timelines work, who managed vendors like a general managing troops, who turned chaotic client visions into flawless executed events. Within 2 years, the firm, Adwoa and Associates, was booking corporate galas, charity dinners, and product launches across Houston. Within 5 years, they had expanded to Dallas and Austin. By 2020, Josephine had been promoted to partner. The money came back, slowly, then all at once. Josephine bought a house in Memorial, a 4-bedroom colonial with a pool that she never used. She bought a new car. She rebuilt her wardrobe. She looked from the outside, like a woman who had survived and thrived. But the infection was still there. The splinter had become a wall, and the wall was between her and Serwa. It wasn't dramatic. There was no single moment, no big fight, no door-slamming confrontation. It was a slow, silent withdrawal, like a tide going out so gradually that you don't notice the water is gone until you're standing on dry sand. When Serwa was in elementary school, Josephine helped with homework every night. By middle school, she checked it once a week. By high school, she didn't check at all. When Serwa was small, Josephine cooked dinner every night. By the time Serwa was 15, dinner was a $20 bill left on the counter with a note that said, "Order something." When Serwa was little, Josephine tucked her in, told her about Grace, told her how brave her mother was. Ah, how kind, how beautiful. By the time Serwa was 16, those conversations had stopped. Grace's name lived in the house like a ghost that nobody mentioned. Serwa felt it. Children always feel it. They can't name it, but they feel the temperature drop. She tried to reach Josephine. Small attempts the way children do. A drawing left on the kitchen table. An invitation to a school play. A question at dinner. "Can you tell me about my mom?" Josephine's answers got shorter. "She was a good woman. She would be proud of you." "I'm tired, Serwa. We'll talk later." Later never came. By the time Serwa graduated from high school in 2022, the relationship had calcified into something functional but hollow. They lived in the same house. They ate at the same table. They spoke in logistics, schedules, groceries, bills, but not in anything that mattered. Serwa got a partial scholarship to the University of Houston. She was studying nursing, Grace's original dream, though she didn't know that. Josephine paid for the rest of the tuition without discussion. She wrote the checks the same way she wrote every check, efficiently, silently, without ceremony. Serwa said thank you. Josephine said you're welcome. And that was the entire conversation about the future. Now, here is where the story turns. And here is where I need you to pay attention. Because what Josephine did at the gala was wrong. There's no defending it. But what led her there, what broke inside her that night, is more complicated than you think. And if you stay with me through this, you might understand something about the difference between a villain and a broken person. If you're watching this and you've ever carried something so heavy for so long that it changed who you are, then you already know. And if you want to see how this ends, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because fate is about to walk into a ballroom and flip every table in it. In January 2026, Adwoa and Associates was hired to plan the Houston Legacy Gala, the biggest charity event of the year. 800 expected guests. Corporate sponsors including Shell, MD Anderson, and the Houston Texans Foundation. A live auction, a keynote speaker, black tie, the Grand Palais Ballroom downtown. Josephine was the lead planner. This was her event. Her name on the production sheet. Her reputation on the line. The keynote speaker was a man named Kofi Asare Bediako, self-made billionaire. A founder of Asare Global Holdings, a conglomerate with interests in energy, real estate, and technology across the Gulf Coast. He was 61 years old, Ghanaian-born, Houston-raised, and one of the most respected business figures in the state. He was also, as Josephine would discover, the man who had been quietly watching her family for 22 years. But we'll get to that. The gala was scheduled for Saturday, March 7th. Josephine had been planning it for 4 months. Every detail was locked. The table arrangements, the lighting, the menu, the AV setup, the auction items, the step and repeat, the VIP lounge, the parking logistics, all of it. And then, 3 days before the event, the staffing company called. "We're short 12 people. Flu going around. We can give you maybe 20 servers instead of 32. And we have no dishwashers." Josephine closed her eyes. 12 missing staff for an 800-person gala. 3 days out. No dishwashers meant the kitchen would collapse within 90 minutes of the first course. She made calls. She begged. She threatened. She got 6 of the 12 replaced. But she was still short on dishwashers and 2 servers. She was sitting at her desk at 11 p.m. on Thursday night, staring at a staffing spreadsheet, when the thought came. Serwa. Serwa was home from college for spring break. She was sitting in the living room watching TV. She was 22 years old. healthy, strong, available. Josephine walked to the living room doorway. I need help at the gala on Saturday. Serwa looked up. What kind of help? Kitchen, dishes. We're short-staffed. Serwa stared at her. You want me to wash dishes? At the Houston Legacy Gala? I need bodies in the kitchen. You're here. You're capable. Auntie Joe, that's the biggest event of the year. You're the lead planner, and you want me in the back washing dishes? I need help, Serwa. Are you going to help me or not? The question wasn't really a question. It was a test, but not the kind Josephine intended. It was the kind that reveals what's already broken. Serwa could have said no. She could have argued. She could have pointed out that she was a college student, not a temp worker. That being asked to wash dishes at a gala your own guardian was running, while 800 people in evening gowns ate filet mignon 30 feet away, was humiliating. But she didn't say any of that, because she had spent 22 years reading Josephine, and she knew that this was not a conversation. It was an instruction. Okay, Serwa said. I'll help. Good. Be ready at 3. Wear something black. You'll get an apron when you arrive. Josephine walked back to her desk. She updated the staffing spreadsheet. She filled in the dishwasher gap with Serwa's name. She didn't think about it again. But the universe was thinking about it. Saturday, March 7th. The Grand Palais Ballroom. Serwa arrived at 3 o'clock. She wore the only black dress she owned, a simple cotton dress she had bought at Target for a classmate's funeral 2 years ago. It was modest, clean. It fit well. She looked, despite everything, like a young woman who belonged in the ballroom, not behind the kitchen door. Josephine met her at the service entrance. She looked at the dress. That's fine. I hear. She handed Serwa a black rubber apron and a pair of yellow dishwashing gloves. Kitchen is through there. Manuel is the kitchen manager. He'll show you the station. Stay in the kitchen. Do not come into the ballroom. Do not talk to guests. Do your job and stay out of the way. Serwa took the apron. She looked at Josephine for a moment, a look that held 22 years of things unsaid. Yes, Auntie Joe. She walked through the steel door and into the kitchen. The kitchen was chaos. Beautiful, organized, screaming chaos. 18 cooks, 6 prep stations, and food moving in every direction. Manuel, a stocky man with a shaved head and a voice that carried, pointed her to a station at the far end. Glasses first, then plates, then pots, stack clean ones on the left. Don't break anything. Don't slow down. Don't stop. Yes. Sir. She started. The water was hot at first, then warm, then cold. The glasses came in waves, champagne flutes, wine glasses, water goblets, each one smudged with lipstick or fingerprints or both. She scrubbed them one by one. She stacked them. She kept going. Through the steel door, she could hear the gala, the murmur of 600 voices, the clinking of real silverware on real china, a jazz quartet playing something smooth and elegant, laughter, applause, the sound of a world she was not allowed to enter. She washed dishes for 2 hours and 47 minutes before the keynote began. At 7:45 p.m., the house lights dimmed. The jazz quartet stopped. A spotlight hit the main stage at the front of the ballroom. The MC, a local news anchor, walked to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce tonight's keynote speaker, a man who needs no introduction in this city, but deserves one every time. Entrepreneur, philanthropist, visionary, the founder and chairman of Asare Global Holdings. Please welcome Mr. Kofi Asare Bediako. The applause was enormous. 600 people on their feet. Kofi walked to the podium slowly. He was tall, 6'3", lean, silver gray hair cropped close, dark brown skin with the texture of a life lived fully. He wore a black tuxedo that fit like it was stitched onto his body. No jewelry except a thin gold chain under his shirt that nobody could see. He stood at the podium. He did not smile. He waited for the applause to stop. and then he spoke. "Thank you. Please sit." They sat. "I was asked to talk tonight about legacy, about what it means to build something that lasts, and I prepared a speech." He held up a folded piece of paper. 20 minutes, polished, safe. The kind of speech that makes everyone feel good and changes nothing. He set the paper down on the podium. "I'm not going to give that speech." The room shifted. 600 people leaned forward by an inch. "Instead, I'm going to tell you a story, a true story, about a woman named Grace." In the kitchen, Serwa's hands stopped moving. The champagne flute in her grip went still. She heard the name through the steel door, faintly, filtered through metal and distance. But she heard it. Grace. She stepped closer to the door. She pressed her ear against the cold steel. Grace Boama grew up in Spring Branch, right here in Houston. She was the daughter of Ghanaian immigrants. And her father drove a taxi. Her mother worked at a dry cleaner. Grace was brilliant, kind, the kind of person who made you believe in people just by being in the room. Serwa's chest tightened. Her mother. He was talking about her mother. "I met Grace in 1998. She was volunteering at a literacy program I funded in the 3rd Ward. She was 24 years old. She walked up to me after a presentation and said, and I will never forget this. She said, 'Mr. Asare, your program is good, but the books are outdated. The kids deserve better.' She then handed me a list, a handwritten list of 47 books she thought we should add to the program. Laughter in the ballroom, warm, appreciative. I looked at that list, and I looked at that young woman, and I thought, this is someone who doesn't just see problems, she sees solutions. And she's not afraid to hand them directly to a billionaire in front of a room full of people." Serwa's hand was flat against the kitchen door. Her eyes were burning. "I funded every book on that list, and then I asked Grace to consult on the program. She did. For 2 years, she helped redesign our literacy curriculum across 4 community centers. She never took a salary. I offered. She refused. She said, 'You pay me in books. That's enough.'" Kofi paused. His voice changed. Lower. Heavier. In March of 2005, Grace and her husband Yaw were killed in a car accident on the Beltway. Grace was 30 years old. Yaw was 32. They left behind an 11-month-old daughter. The ballroom went silent. Absolute silence. "Her name is Serwa." In the kitchen, Serwa's knees buckled. She caught herself on the edge of the sink. Manuel looked over. "You okay?" She couldn't speak. She shook her head. She pressed her ear back to the door. "After Grace died, I made a decision. I set up a trust, a private trust, in Serwa's name, funded by Asare Global Holdings. It was to be activated on Serwa's 23rd birthday, next month, or at a moment when I felt the time was right." He paused. "The time is right." Kofi reached under the podium and produced a leather folder. He opened it. "The Grace Boama Legacy Trust, established April 2005, current value $14.7 million. The room gasped. Not a polite gasp. A collective, visceral 600-person intake of breath that sounded like the building itself was shocked. "This trust provides full funding for Serwa Boama's education. Any institution, any degree, any field, for as long as she wants to study. It provides a living stipend of $8,000 per month until she is 30. It provides seed capital of $2 million for any business or nonprofit she chooses to create. And it provides an endowment for the Grace Boama Foundation, a new organization already registered that will continue Grace's literacy work in the 3rd Ward, Alif, and Spring Branch for the next 50 years. The room erupted. Applause, cheering, standing ovation. 600 people on their feet. Kofi raised his hand. They sat. "But there's a reason I'm doing this tonight, at this event, in this room." His voice dropped. The ballroom leaned in. "Because Serwa Boama is here tonight. Murmurs. Heads turning. People looking at each table, scanning faces, searching for the young woman. See, she is not at one of these tables. She is not wearing an evening gown. She is not holding a champagne glass. Kofi's eyes moved from the audience to the back of the room, to the steel kitchen door. She is in the kitchen, washing your dishes. The sound that went through the room was unlike anything Serwa had ever heard. It wasn't a gasp. It wasn't a murmur. It was a wave. A rolling, spreading, devastating wave of realization that hit every table at once. 600 heads turned toward the kitchen door. Josephine was standing at table 4, the VIP sponsors table, holding a clipboard. She had been monitoring the event flow, checking the timeline, doing her job. When Kofi said, "Washing your dishes," the clipboard slipped from her hands. It hit the carpeted floor with a soft thud that nobody heard because the room was already in motion. "Would Miss Serwa Boama please come to the stage?" The kitchen door didn't move. "Would Miss Serwa Boama please come to the stage?" Manuel looked at Serwa. She was frozen, soap suds dripping from her gloves, apron streaked with grease, eyes red. "Go," Manuel said. "Whatever that is out there, it's for you. Go." Serwa pulled off the yellow gloves. She untied the apron. She looked down at herself, the simple black Target dress, now damp at the hem. Soap residue on her forearms. Her hair pulled back in a plain bun. She pushed through the steel door. The ballroom hit her like a wall. The light, the chandeliers, the sea of evening gowns and tuxedos. 600 faces turning toward her as she stepped from the fluorescent kitchen into the golden ballroom. She walked across the floor. Her shoes, plain black flats, and the only pair she owned, were silent on the carpet. The room was silent too. No applause, no murmurs. Just the sound of 600 people watching a young woman in a damp dress walk from the back of a kitchen to the front of a stage. She passed table 4. She saw Josephine. Their eyes met. Josephine's face was white. Not white from fear, white from recognition. The recognition of what she had done, not just tonight, but across 22 years of distance, withdrawal, and slow abandonment. The recognition of a woman who had taken a baby from a hospital hallway and promised to take care of her, and instead had put her in a kitchen to wash dishes at a gala so that 600 strangers could eat off clean plates. Serwa didn't stop. She didn't speak. She looked at Josephine for exactly 2 seconds, not with anger, not with accusation, but with something worse. Understanding. The understanding of a child who had always known she was a burden, who had felt the temperature drop and never known why, who had said yes, Auntie Joe 1,000 times because the alternative was silence. She walked past. She reached the stage. Kofi extended his hand and helped her up the 3 steps. She stood beside him, under the chandelier, in a damp Target dress, with soap residue on her arms, and 600 people rose to their feet. The applause was not polite. It was not performative. It was the sound of a room that had just witnessed something true, something raw and unscripted and real, and didn't know what else to do with the feeling except put their hands together. Kofi waited for the applause to fade. Then he turned to Serwa. "Your mother changed my life," he said. She was 24 years old and she walked up to a billionaire and told him his books were outdated. She didn't care about my money. She cared about the children. And that kind of courage, is the rarest thing in any room. Serwa's tears were falling freely. She didn't wipe them. "I promised your mother, long before she died, that if anything ever happened to her, I would make sure her daughter was taken care of. I didn't tell you sooner because Grace wanted you to grow up without the weight of money. She wanted you to earn your character first. And you have." He turned to the audience. "This young woman works 2 jobs during the school year. She maintains a 3.8 GPA in nursing school. She volunteers at a free clinic in A-Leaf on Saturdays. And tonight she was washing dishes in a kitchen because someone asked her to help and she said yes. He looked at Serwa. Your mother would be so proud of you, and I am honored, truly honored, to finally keep my promise to her. He handed her the leather folder. She took it with both hands. Her fingers were still pruned from the dishwater. She opened it. She read the first page. Her knees went weak. Kofi steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. $14.7 million, she whispered. Every penny your mother's legacy earned. Serwa pressed the folder against her chest. She closed her eyes, and she said something so quiet that only Kofi and the front row microphone caught it. Mama, I hear you. The room broke. 600 people crying, clapping, standing. Some of them reaching for their phones to record, and some of them just standing there with their hands over their hearts because they didn't know what else to do. Josephine had not moved from table 4. She was standing exactly where she had been standing when the clipboard fell. Her arms were at her sides. Her face was wet, not from the tears of someone caught, from the tears of someone seen. Because Kofi's speech had not mentioned her by name. He had not pointed at her. He had not accused her. He had simply described a young woman washing dishes at a gala, and every person in that room had turned to the kitchen door and understood. And Josephine, standing in her tailored black event planner's dress, her headset around her neck, her clipboard on the floor, understood something too. She had not failed because she was cruel. She had failed because she was tired. She had failed because the grief of losing Grace had never left. It had just changed shape. It had become distance. It had become efficiency. It had become the quiet daily act of providing without loving, of being present without being there. She had kept Serwa alive, fed, housed, educated. She had written every check, made every appointment, attended every parent-teacher conference through middle school. She had done the logistics of motherhood, but she had not done the love. And standing in that ballroom, watching the daughter of her best friend hold a leather folder against her chest and whisper, "Mama, I hear you." Josephine felt the full weight of 22 years crash down on her at once. She didn't deserve to approach the stage. She knew that. She didn't deserve to be part of this moment. She knew that too. But she walked forward anyway, not to the stage, to the bottom of the steps. She stood there, looking up at Serwa, her hands clasped in front of her, her face open, her armor gone. Serwa. Serwa looked down at her, the folder still pressed to her chest. "I'm sorry," Josephine said. "Not for tonight, for all of it, for every year I pulled away, for every dinner I didn't cook, for every conversation I ended, for every time you tried to reach me and I made myself smaller so you couldn't." Her voice cracked. "Your mother asked me to take care of you, and I kept you alive. But I didn't. I didn't give you what she would have given you. I gave you a roof. She would have given you warmth. I gave you food. She would have given you herself. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that I couldn't be her." The room was silent. 600 people watching a woman dismantle herself at the bottom of a stage. Serwa looked at her for a long time. 22 years of silence sitting between them. 22 years of "yes, Auntie Joe" and $20 bills on counters and doors closing softly and names not spoken and love not given. Then Serwa came down the steps. She stood in front of Josephine. "You didn't have to take me," Serwa said. "Nobody made you. You were 31 years old and your best friend died, and instead of grieving and moving on, you picked up a baby that wasn't yours and you raised her. You gave up your 20s, your 30s. Your career nearly broke. You worked 2 jobs at the same time just to keep a roof over my head." Her voice was steady, stronger than Josephine expected. "You weren't warm. You weren't soft. You didn't tell me stories about my mother the way she would have. But you were there. Every single morning. Every single night. You never left. You never gave up. You never put me in the system. You never walked away." Serwa reached out and took Josephine's hands. You couldn't be my mother. Nobody could. But you were the woman who stayed. And that counts. That has always counted. Josephine's face crumbled. Not the slow collapse of someone performing emotion. The sudden total destruction of a wall that had been holding back 22 years of grief and guilt and love that didn't know how to express itself. She pulled Serwa into her arms. She held her the way she should have held her 10,000 times before. She held her the way Grace would have held her, tight, complete, without reservation. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered. I'm so sorry." "I know, Auntie Jo, I know." They stood there, in the middle of a ballroom, in front of 600 people who had come for a charity gala and received something they never expected, the sight of two broken people choosing each other in real time. Kofi Asare Bediako stood on the stage above them. He watched. And for a man who had built a billion-dollar empire, who had sat across from presidents and prime ministers, who had negotiated deals that shaped the energy landscape of an entire region, he later said that this was the most powerful thing he had ever witnessed. A woman who failed, admitting it, and a daughter who understood why. The gala continued, but nothing was the same. The auction raised $4.2 million, a record. And 3 corporate sponsors announced matching gifts to the Grace Boama Foundation on the spot. A woman at table 11, a retired teacher, walked to the stage during the auction break and donated her entire retirement savings, $47,000. She said, "Grace would have wanted those books." Kofi found Josephine before he left. She was in the back hallway near the service entrance, the same entrance where she had handed Serwa the rubber apron 4 hours earlier. Her headset was off. Her clipboard was gone. She was sitting on a folding chair, staring at the wall. "Mrs. Mensa Teta." She looked up. "Mr. Asare, I need you to know something. I've known about Serwa her whole life. I've had people checking on her since she was a baby. Reports, updates, school records. I know everything." Josephine's face went still. "I know about the 2 jobs. I know about the Holiday Inn and the barbecue restaurant. I know about the 4 a.m. mornings and the midnight pickups. I know you paid for her braces. I know you drove her to every college tour. I know you sat in the parking lot of her SAT exam for 4 hours because you didn't want to drive home and risk being late to pick her up." Josephine's chin trembled. "I also know about the distance, the withdrawal, the silence. I know that you pulled away because the grief never left, and you didn't know what to do with it except survive." He sat down in the folding chair beside her. "You are not a villain, Josephine. You are a woman who was given an impossible task and did the best she could with what she had. Was it enough? No. Grace would have wanted more. But Grace is not here. You are. And you stayed." Josephine put her face in her hands. "The trust isn't just for Serwa," Kofi said. "There's a provision in it, a separate fund, for you." She looked up. $250,000, for you to take a sabbatical, to go to therapy, to grieve your best friend properly, something you never had the time or money to do. Grace asked me to take care of her daughter, but she also asked me to take care of you. I'm 22 years late on that second promise, but I'm keeping it now." Josephine broke. Completely. The kind of breaking that sounds ugly and looks worse and is the most honest thing a human being can do. Kofi sat beside her. He didn't touch her. He didn't speak. He just sat there. 2 Ghanaians in a back hallway of a Houston ballroom. One who had built an empire. One who had raised a child. And both keeping promises made to a woman who died too young. Serwa found them there 20 minutes later. She had changed out of the damp dress. Someone at the gala had given her a shawl and a pair of heels and told her she looked beautiful. She did. Not because of the shawl, because of the light in her face. She saw Josephine, red-eyed, broken open, sitting in a folding chair in a hallway. She sat down beside her. She took her hand. "Let's go home, Auntie Jo." Josephine looked at her. "You still want to go home? With me?" Where else would I go? Josephine almost laughed. Almost. They drove home together. The memorial house. The 4-bedroom colonial with the pool nobody used. Josephine parked in the driveway. She turned off the engine. Neither of them moved. I'm going to try harder, Josephine said. I don't know how. But I'm going to try. I know. I loved you the whole time. I need you to know that. Even when I couldn't show it. Even when I was pulling away. I loved you the whole time. I know that too, Auntie Joe. How? Because you stayed. They sat in the car in the driveway for 11 minutes. Not talking. Not needing to. Just sitting in the quiet of a house that had been full of silence for 22 years. But for the first time, the silence felt different. It felt like the beginning of something. Serwa opened the car door first. She walked to the front door. She turned around. Auntie Joe. Yeah? Tomorrow morning I'm making breakfast. And you're going to sit at the table and eat it. And we're going to talk about my mother. Everything you remember. Every story. Every detail. Josephine's eyes filled. Okay. And Auntie Joe? Yeah? I want the sunflower story. Mom loves sunflowers. I know she did. I just don't know why. Josephine smiled. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she smiled and it reached her eyes. I'll tell you everything. They went inside. The door closed. The porch light stayed on. And somewhere, in whatever place the people we lose go when they leave us, Grace Boama smiled too. Because her daughter was safe. Her best friend was healing. And the promise made in a hospital hallway 22 years ago had finally been kept. Not perfectly. Not the way Grace would have done it. But kept. In the only way that broken, tired, imperfect people can keep promises. By staying. If Josephine had never pulled away, if she had loved Serwa the way Grace would have, the trust still would have been read. The foundation still would have been created. The moment on the stage still would have happened. But the dish soap on Serwa's hands, the rubber apron, the cold water in the sink, the steel door between her and the ballroom, that is what made 600 people stand up and cry. Because it showed them the distance between what we promise and what we deliver. Between who we mean to be and who we become when life grinds us down. Between the love we carry and the love we actually give. Josephine carried love for 22 years. She just forgot to hand it over. And fate, patient, quiet, devastating fate, waited until a gala in downtown Houston to remind her. If you want to see who fate visits next, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because in these stories, the villains aren't always evil. Sometimes they're just broken. And the heroes aren't always brave. Sometimes they're just the ones who stayed. And fate? Fate doesn't punish. It reveals. Every time.
Años exactamente, bueno, no exactamente, ¿no? Un grupo de soñadores en La Paz decidió fundar algo que trascendería generaciones. El glorioso Club Bolívar. No imaginaron que... Oye, me he esforzado al hacer el discurso. ¿Qué ponen ZZ, chat? Basta, me he esforzado, se los juro que me he esforzado, bro, basta. Por favor, me he esforzado en el discurso, respéteme un poquito, chat. Bueno, igual lo voy a leer, me la chupan, la verdad. Chat, nefastos. Son unos envidiosos, ¿saben? Son unos envidiosos. ¿En qué me quedé? No imaginaron que ese nombre se convertiría en un sinónimo de grandeza, lucha y de orgullo nacional. 101 años después, Bolívar no es solo un club. Es un sentimiento que se hereda, que se sufre y se celebra. Últimamente sufrimos mucho por Robato, ¿no? Es el latido de miles de hinchas que en cada victoria y en cada caída nunca abandonan, ¿verdad? Nomás. Porque ser celeste no es una elección, es una forma de vivir. Muy bien, qué lindo, un aplauso. Bravo, bravo. Muchachos, tremendo discurso. Buenas noches, Edito, ¿cómo estás? Por lo menos ponte tu chompita, pues, un busito para leer el discurso. A ver, cállate, Gabo. ¿Vos quieres ser baneado? Este discurso lo he hecho en mi cama, pensando en lo que es ser bolivarista, la verdad. Un aplauso, por favor, y con ayuda también del gran ChatGPT. Un aplauso para ChatGPT. Ah, ¿cuál era la finalización de un ratito? Dice, que estos 101 años sean solo el comienzo de muchas más llenos de alegría. Felicidades, Academia. Felicidades, Bolívar. ¡Bravo! Aplausos para ChatGPT, muchachos. Para vos no, dice. Buenas noches, muchachos, ¿cómo están? Gracias por estar aquí, perdón por prender tan tarde. La verdad estaba viendo mi serie, estaba viendo el regreso de Justin Bieber. Toda la tarde me vi fútbol, hasta vi el partido del Tigre. Vi el partido de River, vi el partido de Oriente. Las declaraciones de Martins, tremendo lo de Martins, bebé, le tiró palo a Villegas, pero bien tirado. Huevada, en su cama lo hizo todo pajeado pensando en el... No, ¿qué dice este Arielito? Oye, ¿quiénes vamos, no? Mi sobrino de Kinder redacta mejor. Dile eso a ChatGPT, yo no he redactado. ¿Qué me estás molestando a mí? Felicidades. Qué basado. Pues la verdad nomás. ¿Qué quieren que les diga? A ver, ¿qué les puedo decir, muchachos? Yo no publiqué nada en mi página, la verdad no hice nada estos días. Han sido momentos difíciles. Bien triste, ¿no? Mentira. Pero no, muchachos, bueno. Quiero felicitar a todos los que son bolivaristas y hoy en día más que nunca, ¿no? Que es difícil ser bolivarista en el sentido de todo el contexto que estamos pasando con el técnico. Pero si lo ven por el otro lado también hay que sentirnos orgullosos porque hemos llegado a estos 101 años. Creo que como la institución mejor parada, tanto económicamente, futbolísticamente y dirigencialmente diría, pero no, creo que no, ahí nos falta, ¿no? Ese eslabón para poder ser una institución sólida. Y como ayer creo que lo decía Dardo Gómez en su publicación en el Cholet, que Dios mío, ¿de dónde cagan tanta plata, bebés? Más fuegos pirotécnicos que en el aniversario de La Paz, no mames. Tremendo, felicidades a los del Cholet y a ver si pasan pues algunos moneys. No mentira. Que dijo que el dirigente tiene que estar siempre al lado del hincha. Y eso es mucha verdad. Y no es por darle palo a Claure, porque él tendrá sus funciones, las cosas que tienen que hacer. Pero creo que por esa parte que estoy... Uy, ¿qué? No, todavía no va a arrancar la fiesta, Tucán, tranquilo. y por esa parte creo que está bien, ¿no? Está bien. Y bueno, se vienen unas futuras elecciones donde el principal candidato es Dardo Gómez a seguir manejando lo que es este club tan bonito que es Bolívar, ¿no? Por detrás, obviamente, yo creo que tiene que haber gente que lo asesore. Espera, ¿mi gatita se ha hecho pipí? No, ya, más bien. Me ha asustado, chicos, la verdad, me ha asustado. Ya saben ustedes, rayada está mi gatita últimamente, ¿no? No, ¿qué dice este Edipox? Y bueno, muchachos, nos espera, creo, un futuro grandioso. Yo lo dije, creo que esta es una oportunidad ya con el Stadium de una vez establecernos como un club de fútbol, pero serio, y fuera de ser autosostenible, que se proyecte a más, ¿me entiendes? No estancarnos en solo ser un club boliviano, sino ya empezar a soñar con, no sé, a ver, por ejemplo, la venta de butacas en el estadio, venta de marketing, merchandising, que se vaya ampliando más las sociedades, ¿me entienden? O sea, yo creo que si una cabeza maneja bien todo eso, creo que podemos despegar, ¿me entiendes? Y no estar ahí creando leyes de mierda con el gobierno, pidiendo perdón para que nos perdonen los impuestos, ¿no? Los gatos, ¿no? Entonces, creo que, o ser un club que está a punto de desaparecer, como Wilstermann, que desapareció de la liga, pero está a punto de desaparecer, pero absolutamente de todo el fútbol. O ser clubes que le están mangueando el auspicio a la UTV, y chupándosela al presidente de la federación por subsistir. Entonces creo que Bolívar es muy grande y tiene, creo que, trascender. Eso es lo que nos falta, trascender, dar ese pasito para trascender y lograr los objetivos que siempre hemos querido, ya sea una Copa Sudamericana o una Copa Libertadores, ¿no? Y siempre tiene que ir de la mano. Estos últimos años, creo que es la verdad, se han ido alejando a las generaciones bolivaristas, al hincha común, al hincha fanático, a todos los tipos de hinchas se han ido alejando del club. por justamente el mal trabajo que se ha ido realizando estos últimos años en Bolívar. ¿Qué decía Valdivia? Creo que dijo que dejó un club autosostenible, o sea, sí, no vamos a decir que no, ¿no? Económicamente creo que se dejó un club autosostenible. A ver, Solís, no pidas Gartic, ya les he dicho qué cosa de Gartic, hoy día es aniversario del club, déjame hablar a ver de mi club, Solís. Igual en el grupo de WhatsApp, no Tucán, jugaremos Gartic, no quiero dibujar huevadas, déjame, no voy a jugar Gartic, ya les he dicho, si quieren dibujar, agarren un cuadernito y empiezan a dibujar sus huevadas, no me vengan a molestar a mí con su Gartic. Saludos Reyisita, ¿cómo estás? ¿Todo bien? Gartic, temática Bolívar, no, métanse su Gartic por el poto, ya les he dicho. Y bueno muchachos, ¿en qué estaba? Es que me niego, muchachos, cada vez Gartic, basta, no quiero jugar Gartic, vayan a jugar Gartic con sus minas. Goklingo, huevadas hablas, ya, espera, ¿qué habla este Ignacio Loza, este Auri? Y bueno muchachos, creo que sí, yo me quedo con eso. Este martes tenemos un partido muy importante en lo económico. Para mí, muy importante para ver qué está el club de cara a este año, porque creo que es indispensable ganarle a ese equipo. En Copa Libertadores, obviamente por los 3 puntos y más, pero pensando a futuro, creo que es muy importante que se vea buen fútbol, ¿no? Y que la gente ya esté un poquito más tranquila con el funcionamiento del equipo. Ayer contra Bebé, bueno, el día sábado contra Bebé, se jugó un buen partido, no digo que un malo partido, creo que empezaron a aparecer personas, o bueno, jugadores que no estaban apareciendo, como es el Papu Velázquez, y muchos más, ¿no? Entonces, interesante. Y bueno, apareció Cauterucho, que en el partido de Libertadores no había aparecido ni de sombra. Parece que Cauterucho solo le mete goles a equipos como ABB. Y preocupa un poquito eso, ¿no? Hoy ganó el Tigre, está puntero con nosotros. Nacional Potosí también está compartiendo la punta con nosotros y muchos más que vienen bien entonándose en lo que es este torneo, ¿no? Que empezó retardísimo y creo que nos va a pesar no solo a nosotros, sino a los demás equipos que están participando en copas internacionales, ya sea Blooming el caso, ¿no? Y otros más. Mete gol equipo chicos como Dorniro, pero Dorni ni jugó. ¿Qué dicen chicos? ¿Qué dicen? La era Robato es la peor de todos los tiempos, bebé, tomando en cuenta el centenario que es una vez en la vida. Sí, es la peor. De los últimos 10 años, ¿se podría decir que lo de Robato es lo peor que nos pudo pasar? A ver, piensen. Es que con lo que me dice el técnico de... A ver, ustedes pónganse a pensar, si tu técnico te dice que el objetivo era solo clasificar a Libertadores y que no estaba obligado a ser campeón, puta, ahí me la bajó mal, amigos, sinceramente, me la bajó mal. Podía aceptarle todas sus huevadas y todo, pero cuando dijo eso, es como que hizo sentir me hizo sentir un club más del montón, ¿me entiendes? Un Nacional Potosí, una Aurora, no sé, otros equipos bien X, así me hizo sentir, la verdad. Por eso yo vuelvo a repetir, yo voy a hablar de lo que veo en la cancha, y este martes, si es que Bolívar gana, se va a aplaudir, y si es que Bolívar pierde, bueno, también se va a criticar algunas cosas, y si han fallado en algunas cosas, igual vamos a criticarlas, vamos a observarlas y vamos a dar nuestro criterio. Pero fuera de eso,